Hello, and welcome to a Bon Mott's production of
MOTSterpiece Theater,
where we review critically acclaimed cinema spanning the breadth of human filmmaking.
MOTSterpiece Theater,
Spoilers, mature content, inappropriate language. Join us.
MOTSterpiece Theater. MOTSterpiece Theater.
Good evening, all. We bring to you tonight The French Connection, a movie about chase scenes and heroin. Ian, well, let's begin with the intro. Thoughts?
Alright, hi, I'm Jonathan Ian Manser. So I was really intrigued by the introduction initially. A guy who seems to be in France, who's like hunting down these suspicious characters in the first of many kind of pseudo chase scenes throughout this movie. And then he gets killed by one of the major villains of the movie, and then it's never brought up again. Cut to Gene Hackman as Santa Claus
in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn,
Look at that.
Basically doing a stakeout of this suspected heroin dealer or drug dealer, a black guy in like a downtrodden neighborhood, and then it goes into another chase scene. So the introduction is really good because it shows you exactly what this movie's about. Mm-hmm. Chases.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it certainly does set up chases. Like you're about to see a bunch of this scattered throughout. But I liked it. Like it's a classic noir setup, right? A man, shady guy, chases other shady guys through the streets of France, or somewhere in city of France. I don't know if it said where it was, but doesn't matter. And then
Versailles.
Okay, and then get shot at the end, and then cut to the cops of the protagonist detectives of the story.
See, when they did the French Connection, I thought it would be that this guy was like a French cop, and it would tie together.
Well,
and then it kind of absolutely went nowhere.
I'm going to say something about that later. We'll get on to a later question, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah, I'll agree with the overall thought that it sets up the movie, even from the beginning when it's just like the music and the names coming. It's one name and the other, and it kind of gives you that idea of cat and mouse. And while I think in some way you're right, like this first death is never brought up, if you kind of look at it in this like meta sort of way, it's okay, there's this establishing shot and then it pulls back on the city of France, and this whole cat and mouse scene goes on, and there's this epic shooting. If you think about it, that's exactly what happens throughout the film itself.
It's a microcosm of everything
that's going to happen in the film, and that's kind of like, oh, okay, like I get that. You're telling me what's going to happen. That's my introduction.
Well, I don't know whether I should I'm going to let you guys give the scores before I do, because I have no idea whether... Should I... let me ask you like an establishing question for how we run this program. Am I just viewing it as my initial impression at the time of the introduction, or am I looking at the introduction over the scope of everything that happens after it?
I say a little bit of both. Like, does it grab you to begin with, and then maybe later on is it relevant? Did it matter to the overall story?
Agreed. Yeah, it's like... Exactly.
Which I know, like,
go ahead. No.
I know, like, you're going to say, like, it qualifies for one and not the other, kind of, in this case.
That's why I'm torn. It's a 0.5.
Mm-hmm. I guess go with your gut. Like, well, what did you... Maybe the impression is the most important part, because it's what is supposed to get you to watch the rest of the story. It's supposed to get you invested in the story, even if it wasn't relevant, perhaps, to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very fair point. Then on that, I was intrigued from the beginning, so I probably have to give it a 1.
I'm going to also, like I said, it's classic noir setup. It's sort of is automatically going to have your interest. If a guy gets shot, that's automatically a mystery.
Yeah.
So, I'll give it a 1, even though if it leaned on like something that was obviously going to probably immerse you, or at least draw you in.
Oh yeah, I would completely agree. It gets you intrigued. You want to know what's going to happen, and everything in that intro sets up the rest of the film. So just those two qualifications. So 1. So that will move us on to the body of the film, and Scott, we'll start with your thoughts on this.
All right, I'm kind of torn on this one. Like, as you said, yeah, it's a whole bunch of chase scenes. That's basically the body of the entire film, but they never, all right, here's what I thought of it. This is maybe having a consequence of having growing up, so I didn't see this movie earlier on, and I've seen all the parody things that came since, maybe things that homage/reference it. But when you have a guy dressed as Santa Claus chasing, like, busting a guy in New York, and when you follow it up with, like, yes, a well done and shot scene, but it's not very intense. It's just two guys walking down the streets of New York slowly. Like, it's odd. Good.
To explain what happens in this film, this Gene Hackman's character, Popeye Doyle, has a hunch about this guy he doesn't know about at a bar, and he decides to stalk him basically off of work, and ends up convincing the captain, who is like kind of dismissive of the entire thing, that they should investigate this guy. And it turns out he's right, that this guy, I guess Sal
Boca.
Sal Boca. He's Italian mobster connected with this like French heroin smuggler. But the entire movie is kind of the police department bumbly following, like, it's just like 20-minute shots of them like following this guy down the street.
Yeah.
And perhaps like the intent is that to show how boring and how like how frustrating it is to be a police officer.
Mundane,
yeah. Sure.
But they go from the fact that the two Popeye Doyle is incredibly racist, misogynistic, violent police officer. He busts into a African American bar and just starts shaking down people, like seeing what drugs they're having. He basically commandeers a vehicle, and it's very strange how they do it, because at some parts fantasy of like what
it's
like a
so
Dirty
ridiculous.
Harry film is, and other times he's a perfect. If this movie was this scene, it would be great. He's standing outside in the cold December
New York
weather, and they're having this gorgeous meal in the restaurant,
and he's like, eating pizza and drinking terrible coffee that he spills out, and for hours they're just sitting there eating like
this like extravagant 7-course French meal with the dessert and the entrecote and the soup and the bread, and like it's such a great like, and that's the thing, they're great beautiful moments, but overall what happens in like, it's just a chase scene. It's like an hour long, and I don't like, it's beautiful to watch, but as a story, would you want to read it?
Exactly. That's what I'm going to say. Yes, they're great moments. So like, I'll try to give you an analogy. It's like reading a description in a novel, like where they're describing something very well, but they just describe it for too long. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I get it. That's fine. You could cut some of this out.
Yes.
So that's why I felt like, more often than not, I found myself thinking that during the portion of the movie. I'm like, all right, they could like knock off 5 minutes. They could knock off whatever it was. They could make this scene shorter, and it would still be fine. I would still understand what's happening. So
that's perfect. Like, that's perfect. I would also suggest that maybe we use narratively meandering.
Yes.
Agreed.
It was padded.
Well said. And like, for the time, you know, this came out in 1971. It was probably so stunning and beautiful watching all of this happen, like, in the city. But it just, like, where's the story? What is actually going on here?
Exactly what you guys supposed to said. Like, is it important to the narrative? Yes, but not all of. Like, you could shave off from it, and the narrative would still be what it is.
So it sounds like we have a consensus. So, what's your?
I'm giving it a 0.
I will give it a 0.
It did not carry me.
Well.
And that will bring it to the conclusion, and I will start with this. I really liked the last bit of it. Like, I'm really torn, because what I really liked is the end synopsis, where they kind of tell you what happens to all the characters, and it kind of gives you the sense that everyone was breaking the law. Like, the cops weren't really following proper procedure, and the criminals, obviously, being criminals, breaking the law. And that no one really gets justice. No one really gets the end means. Like, the criminals kind of get away with it and the cops get demoted, and that's a nice sense. But until then, the last ending where they're chasing everybody, and I don't know, it was just, for me, there's a huge plot hole too, in the sense that they put all of the money into the car that they went to the auction scene, and therefore you have this scene that maybe becomes irrelevant, and then why the hell did you have this scene? So the money's in that car. The drugs are taken out of the car that was searched by the police and put into the wall. And then they drive out in the car that was searched by the police earlier in the film. And they get stopped by the cops, and then they turn around. I'm like, well, there's nothing in your car. Can't you just go through the cops? Like, what are they gonna?
You probably could have done a couple years for like tax evasion or something like that.
I think
But
I
is
thought
there
they
any
switched it. Is what I got. Like they gave them a different car, like so they could follow him to the drug deal. You know what I mean?
No, but they had the drugs in there. Now, I have a question for you about the ending. Because maybe this movie was just meandering. It lost me. It absolutely.
I think that's the case with me then too.
How did I understand how the cops got the car because the guy parked out on the side of the road. Why did he park that car on the side of the road with all the drugs in it in a like
sketchy neighborhood? Yeah, why not put it in like a nice parking deck or
because he doesn't know how to deal drugs in New York. Clearly, he was not the greatest drug dealer. He was trying to move up to be one.
But
I don't know. I mean, it's a funny point.
Wasn't that the French guy's car?
Yeah.
Why was Sal in
Yeah,
possession of it?
I got out that that was their meet point, or like they was going to stash it, so like it wasn't near them or whatever.
And Sal's involved, so
was-
it's a cover name, so like nothing's in the French guy's name.
Yeah, I agree. It's a weaker excuse, justification I'm
It
offering
was
you,
in the
but
French TV personality's
Personalities, yeah.
name. So like again, he could have just had it parked in a like
Yeah,
upscale
fair
garage
Yeah,
with security
Yeah.
and have it like.
I get it. It's
It's a-
sure,
yeah.
sure.
But that would be in the body, so let's think conclusion.
Well, I think this leads on to the
Okay, so
conclusion
where do
and
you-
how they
yeah.
brought the car there.
I
They
see.
swapped the money for it. Then there's the shootout, which like every single thing that the cops do, like makes me question their actions and their competency. And I don't know if it's supposed to be like kind of a parallel to real life, but again, you can't have it both ways. You can't have a sniper like shootout on the roof and a chase scene or chasing a train, and then have like kind of like the realistic aspects of cop. Like it just feels
It's
off
jarring.
that way.
Yes, I agree with that. The thing is, I actually did like the conclusion because here's what I'm saying. It was the conclusion that this movie deserved, and all the characters in it got pretty much what they should have.
Yeah.
And was it the happiest one? No, but I don't think it's supposed to be. And we were discussing this a bit outside the cast, but the theme, as we shortly will speak about, is related to this, where it's just they're all incompetent. Like you're like, oh, you have a hunch, but you've been wrong before, and they even outright said that when he was wrong, a cop died because of it.
But how many cops died because of Popeye?
Well, I'm gonna
there's-
say that like
right,
it's like as if he keeps fucking up, but in the end he's always right. So what is that supposed to say to you? Like, I don't know. It was
just 'cause
odd the way they characterized him. So
And it's
I
like,
know
does
it's a
the end
different question.
justify the means? Like, if you're right, but does it excuse all the actions that you take to get there?
There was about the conclusion. When it was about to conclude the movie, Scott and I were talking about how we hope. Like, I haven't seen this movie in like 10 plus years, so I don't even remember what the ending was. So we're saying we hope that he doesn't bust the French guy because he doesn't deserve to have the collar.
Agreed.
And
Yep.
when he got demoted, it was actually definitely something he
He
deserved.
deserved, yes, for
deserved,
sure,
yeah.
for sure.
And I'm not done. I guess the question for me is then when does the conclusion kind of begin? Because I love that, like that last scene where they see all the faces and they say what happens to them. Like, yeah, everyone gets what they deserve, and the French guy gets away, which is great. So
I'll say to answer your question, like the last 20 minutes, like right when they start doing it, when they roll up to the garage with the cars. So right before the shootout, I think that sets up the conclusion and then the final coda to it.
That's the epilogue.
yeah.
So, which isn't quite the conclusion, but it is part of the conclusion.
I think it counts, and I think
good.
it's all perfectly fine.
And I think that the last like 1 minute of this movie in the epilogue redeemed a hell of a
Saved
lot
most
of
of
That's
it.
conclusion.
yeah. So I think if the epilogue wasn't there, I wouldn't like this movie as much as I was, and I didn't like the conclusion. Well, I kind of did because it like ends with a bang. You don't really know what happens, but outside of that, if it's going from when they're rolling up and they're exchanging all the like at this point, I would have to go with a 0 because it's the epilogue for me that does it, not the everything else.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think that the epilogue, because it was tacked on later, because you could definitely see that, like, it could have been the original intent that it just ended with the bang. You know, the French guy shot Popeye, or Popeye shot the French guy, and then they wanted a more satisfactory conclusion at the end.
I see what you mean. We can't say that for sure unless we do some more research about it, but I can certainly see that maybe being the case. But we discussed a movie recently where that was the case too, where I felt the coda like sort of was better than the quote unquote ending itself or conclusion, and therefore taken together, it elevated my rating. So that's all.
So, Shall we vote?
I'm giving it a 1.
I'm giving it 1 as well.
I'm gonna go with a 0.
Fair enough.
Rebel.
That's what I do. In that case, that will bring us to themes.
All right. So, as I said, incompetence, scrappy. I don't know. I can't even say what theme this movie wanted to have other than life is complicated and people fuck up, which is sort of seemed to be a running theme in various contemporary works that we were talking about. But yeah, like Ian said something pretty good just before, where they wanted to have it both ways to show you like the boring, mundane side, like the unexciting side of police work, but then have like crazy chases, like I don't know. And in the end, I like that it was kept like open ended, like it didn't show who shot who. Like I'm always kind of gonna fall for that, or like I'll appreciate it when it's done well, and I think it was done well here. It's just that other than that, it didn't seem like cops and robbers have a complicated life, and sometimes with one win, sometimes they get away. I don't know. Other than that, I can't really say what the theme was.
Okay. I'm gonna lay down.
All right, give us a Waldo-esque thingy.
This is the precursor to Unforgiven, another
All right.
happy movie. They're taking the idea of the kind of Dirty Harry type cop trope of a cop that plays by his own rules, doesn't care what other people think, like willing to go into like ridiculous chases, and showing what a person like that would actually be like.
Yeah. A complete dick is the answer.
Yeah.
Yes. He
Fair
gets
enough,
plenty
maybe,
of people killed. He is not very successful. Most of the criminals get off on technicalities.
Yeah. And there's even this one like scene where he wakes up on a bar. Like he's obviously slept there the whole night and he's dirty and just ragged the entire movie. And you're right, that's exactly what it would be in real life.
All right. I mean, I like that. I certainly don't disagree with it. It's funny, but it just wasn't the theme I thought they were going for.
I don't know if they were going for that.
But that's what you got
what
out of
I
it.
got out of it.
Fair
And
enough.
I'm probably giving it more credit than...
I think you are. But regardless.
And I hope, because I really can't think of another good theme in this movie.
Like I said, I agree with that. So
Aside from, like, cops were dicks back then and cops
Still
were
are.
dicks today.
they're just bigger dicks today, but they were still dicks before as well. Yeah. Anyway.
They only shot one person in the back.
Yeah, well, good on them.
Oh,
This one.
that's true. At least that guy killed 2 people beforehand, so, you know, maybe they're a little better than today's cops. I think for me the epilogue sets up this theme of, like, everyone getting their just due. And, like, again, the guy the sniper on the roof shoots a mother who's, you know, with a carriage of a probably young child, and then that's the guy that gets shot in the back. So, in a way, everybody kind of gets what they're due in the end, and that's why it kind of falls as the theme of it. Gene, I'm kind of rambling here,
Hackman.
sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Gene Hackman plays by his own rules, and for that he gets demoted. So even though he's right, even though he does capture this huge heroin deal, it doesn't matter because you didn't.
Because you're a dick and you don't do your job correctly.
Exactly. You kill a cop along the way. You kill an FBI agent along the way, actually.
But eventually he becomes Bill O'Reilly, so it's all good for him. And the reason I say that is Gene Hackman looks like a young Bill O'Reilly, and their personalities are like 90%.
At least in this film, anyways.
Yes. Oh, yeah, in this film. So I couldn't divorce the two from my mind.
Fair enough.
Yeah, definitely. So what are we saying?
0 for me, man. There's not enough there. For me.
I'm gonna hope
Whatever was there, it was unclear. That's all.
it's what I think it is.
You can't vote on fate. You gotta vote on what's in the movie, man.
You're right, and this was a hot mess. So I have to go to 0.
See, I'm torn because I see your points of view, but again, for me, it's just that epilogue that everybody gets justice. The world in its own weird, fucked up way has a balance to it.
So the French heroin dealer who probably will have killed far more people through his drugs.
But drugs is
deserves
a
to get
choice.
away.
It's not as though he is going up to these people and injecting them by force. If those people take the drug, you could argue that
If I
it's
sell
their choice.
heroin.
It's their
Isn't it
choice to
mine?
take that drug. He is a good criminal. He gets away from the cops. He invades them for a really long time.
He killed one person who I assume was a police officer.
Yeah.
Or had that police officer killed, and he had Popeye, who probably deserves to die in this movie, he put a contract out on him. He's theoretically morally responsible for the mother being shot to death because without his word, she would have never taken that bullet.
You could argue, but it's also that the person made the choice of when to shoot the bullet, and therefore, although he's
Well, there's no free will
You
anyway.
justify how that.
Yes, exactly. There's no free will anyways. So in that case, I'm gonna give it a 1.
Right, fair enough.
And this will lead us into characters. We will start with the antagonist. And Ian, care to share?
Traditionally, I'd have to say the suave Frenchman, or like Froggy One.
That's what I got out of it.
Frog
One.
Yeah, would be the main villain. But I don't know. I don't think he's if he's the antagonist, like the actor, I guess did a fine job, but there's nothing there.
Yes, exactly.
It's not even one-dimensional. He's sort of like, I don't know, maybe it's a kind of an idea of that this is the fog of war almost. We're seeing it from the cop's point of view, that you're never certain. There's actually a great shot in there during a chase scene where the villain, the Frenchman, is looking into a shop window, and then you see him move away, and in another mirror, which looks like he's walking in that direction, then it turns out that in another reflection, he's moving in a different direction, and that he's kind of a slippery eel. They have almost a ridiculous scene where he's entering a train, and
he gets off the train and then gets back on the train. Yeah,
they do a little dance between. So, that was neat, neat shots, but I don't know if I can say he has a character.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'll address that when we get to style and atmosphere. Like, it's really awesome, but I would say pretty much for all the characters, there's no development. I don't know who you are. I don't know, and I guess you're right to some extent. You can make the argument that it's related to this idea that you don't really know, you're uncertain what's going on, it's all kind of shady deals, and it does play into that, but I think it takes it to a point where you just don't care about the characters, and that is a major flaw.
I agree with a large portion of both of that. Yeah, traditionally he would be, but you can say heroine then is the antagonist. He could be replaced with anything else. A suave Frenchman walking through the street. That's all you need, really. That was his character, and that's what he nailed it for sure. Because that's all he did. In another movie, he could be approaching villain protagonist status, where you could follow him into his life. But to answer,
in fact, sorry about that, but the other thing, you actually have nicer moments with him as a character than you do with any of the protagonists.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say something like that. Yeah, but that's true. There are moments that were approach characterization, and they're quite well done. Sure, it's just, but overall, as you said, there is as we said before to other things, there just isn't enough there to qualify him as an effective villain in this film.
I will agree, and even to some extent, he's more humanized because there's that one part where he goes into his home and you see his wife.
You see more of his home life than you do of
anyone
Doyle's.
else, and she gives him they give each other gifts and they talk about how happy they are together, and it's almost like you want to root for this person because in a way they're the only one that you can attach to, and it's like you don't care about anyone else, so let them die. I let Gene Hackman die at the end of the movie. I don't really care.
Sure.
What was it, Sal Boca? I guess he could be considered an antagonist as well. But again, it's almost they took a caricature of an Italian mobster.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who was the guy from The Godfather who was married to the sister and sets up Sonny?
I don't remember his character's name.
Carlo or something like that.
I don't remember.
No, he's that character. It's almost exactly the same type of person that they play, except without any depth to it.
I agree with that, but I'm going to count him as in a different question. But I agree with again, if he's less characterized than the other guy, that's almost zero characterization.
Yeah. So it sounds as though we're in a consensus. Ian?
Yeah, I'm going to have to give this a 0.
0 as well from me.
I will agree. And then I guess that brings it to me. I feel like I got out of order somewhere.
Yeah.
It is on you, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. for the protagonist. There's not much more I'm going to add than we said to the antagonist. You can kind of go back and forth depending on who you think's the protagonist or antagonist and how you read the film. But at the end of the day, there's no character. There's no story among them that you want to follow and get invested with, and you're kind of on these chase scenes. And I think Ian said it best when you don't really care about the. Well, what was it?
All right, I heard some. I'm quoting someone else. I forget who said this, but it's like you can't if you see a chase scene but you don't know what the stakes are to it, then you don't care.
Can't be invested.
Yeah,
You can be invested. Yeah, and I would apply that to the characters here. I don't know what's at stake for the characters, so I really don't care what you're doing. And maybe, Gene Hackman's trying to prove himself because obviously he's messed up in the past or whatever, but you don't feel that. So just...
I'm sure that you could psychoanalyze Papaya
Doyle
the entire time. However, he's so loathsome of a person that I could never root for him. Nor is he a villain protagonist, because generally they're like... I actually really disliked his character. He's racist. He's like xenophobic. He is misogynistic. He's a drunkard. He flaunts authority as a police officer in the worst way possible. And maybe like it's almost like Bad Lieutenant, but with none of the charm.
Yes, yeah.
That's an amazing description.
It was great.
I like that a lot. I agree. Like he's just a d-bag, like the whole fucking movie. So that makes it hard to root for him. And like maybe you're supposed to like, and even like the case itself was on paper. Oh, they're busting the heroin smuggling ring, blah blah blah. Like, but even that fell flat. Even the case itself had very little character, and the characters who were investigating it also had little to no character, especially him. And yeah, like you said, like I think the final thing is. Do you root for this character? No, I didn't really give a shit whether or not he solved it.
In fact,
he was fucking up the whole time.
Yeah.
Looking for him to be punished.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
the end, yeah. I guess it says a lot that the only thing we really know about Gene Hackman's character is that he's an asshole.
Yeah, he's complete. Yeah, exactly. The character is cop dick, like, and that's all you get. You don't see anything else about him.
Yeah.
And that becomes wearisome very quickly.
Yes.
Again, if they were intentionally doing it, though, it's brilliant.
Like,
but you can't claim that.
And you can't. You have to do it to a point where you're not alienating the audience
Yes,
while
exactly.
doing it. Especially when there's, as you said, even the case doesn't have a lot of merit. So it's not like I can file the case and be interested in it. There's nothing there.
like maybe it's a sign of the times because of the when this film is made. But regardless, standing on its own narrative merits or lack thereof.
This thing is, I can enjoy films from the 20s. I can enjoy books from the 1800s for the narrative quality. Like that's something that's timeless to it,
Yes.
and this
feels dated and because of many reasons we just said. So,
All right.
in case you haven't gathered, I'm giving him a 0.
I'm gonna go.
Sounds
green.
like we are.
Yes.
being a strong one.
Yeah, sure.
And now I'll lead us to Scott with supporting characters.
All right, I may surprise you guys with this one. I'm going to give it a 1 because in our grand tradition of having a side character that you like, I like the FBI guy who constantly berated Popeye for all the fuck-ups that he made in the past, which is totally legit. It's not like he's making it up. He has fucked up in the past, causing the death of a fellow officer. And in fact, the most ironic thing is also then later on, toward the end of the big shootout, FBI guy gets shot by Doyle himself, thus proving his own theory.
But I think that leads credence to the idea that it was intentional. Like,
Maybe. But either way, I liked him a lot. I almost counted Sal as a side character, like a villain side protagonist, if you will. Sidekick.
So I just had a thought. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. But does he not actually see the French guy go into the building? And his whole point is that he wants to kill the FBI agent. And then when he goes into the room and shoots, he could
I
just
think
shoot.
he's so wants to be the hero.
He was jumpy, yeah. I got that out of it. That sounds like an LA Confidential kind of thing again. It's too complicated for this movie to try to let you to get that out of it.
Oh.
Scott, in your tradition, or in our tradition here, I'm going to give a secondary character that I really like.
Roy Snyder, his partner.
No, I like the actor quite a bit, and I'm glad that this guy retired and became a sheriff of Amity Island. But the heroin tester.
Alright.
That guy was, he had 2 scenes, he was amazing.
I agree with that. He was pretty good. I did like him.
Yeah.
In fact, when that happened, I mentioned I'd seen this movie many, many years ago. All of a sudden, I remembered that scene, and it had stuck. Even though I didn't consciously remember it, it's stuck. Of all the scenes in this movie, this stuck with me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Him counting off the numbers of the thing.
Fair enough. Yeah. So like oddly, I gave them a high score. And, the supporting characters almost had more character than everyone else themselves. Anyways.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say is between the main Frenchman's wife and the heroin dealer, I feel like those are the two characters that you got the most out of, and you felt like they were human. And you can see the tester kind of, this is what he does, and he goes around, he's like this weird chemist scientist guy, all above the drug world, and he enjoys it. And you can see the French wife, like, she's like, oh, I just came back from shopping. And you can almost see it in your head because she's so real.
At least that was characterization. Yeah.
Here's another little subtle moment of characterization which surprised me for this film. When they tell the chemist that he can take a bag with him, and he reaches for the
Reaches
whole...
for the brick.
And it's not a harsh way. He's like, put that down, take the other one.
He's like, no, I mean the small one, and see you later.
He smirks at them when it happens. It's like a lovely little character moment that doesn't appear anywhere
They're
else.
buddy drug dealers.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So
That's funny.
Yeah. I'll give it a 1.
I think we're all giving it
Yeah.
one.
One for me, for sure.
I think this is the first time we've ever had antagonist and protagonist both get 0s, but the supporting characters get 1.
Possibly. It's the first time for everything, buddy, but yeah.
Anything happen. Well, moving on, we will go to dialogue. Ian?
Why did I have to go first for this one? Was anything like particularly stood out to me? No. But I felt it captured the time very well. And I think that the dialogue would be best suited in style for this one.
Well, go on with that.
Like it's very much part of the, like, to go a little bit into style. They capture New York beautifully in this, and like all these different aspects of it, and the culture of it, and the dialogue really shows police culture, like African American culture back then. There's a lot of it in French and subtitled, which is very impressive for an action film in a sense.
And drug culture too. They use the lingo a lot there. Yeah.
So I think they do the style very well. But was any of it particularly like great? I think it was serviceable, but perhaps because it was stylized dialogue. Oh no, because you think of like Tarantino when you think of stylized dialogue, but more of like,
it's like used when appropriate.
Yes.
It's not overdone. It's enough just to get the story going. It almost in a way reminds me of an old black and white film where they would just have the cards with the words on it, and it's enough to carry the story.
That's kind of what I'm gonna like. Yes, that's true, but like it's just enough to carry the story. Like, and there were definitely ones that were cringeworthy to me, and like that's always like the the tipping point usually for us.
Do you remember what they were? Because
I'm
usually the first to get cringe.
And I'm going to tie it into something I said where like they can cut some of it out. Where you, like they're in the car and they're having a stakeout, and he goes, "What time is it? Oh, 4:10. What time is it? 4." Like they don't even have him repeat that. That's just kind of like weird filler, and I don't know. And there's a bunch of X-Pos dumps that I didn't like.
Oh, there were some. I was thinking about it. There's some really like cringeworthy like banter that went on.
Like when he busts the bar guy, like the people in the bar, like that was kind of annoying. Like it also dragged on. So I don't know. Like, yes, it did its job, but that's all it did. It didn't add anything to the film. It was like, we got to go here. Oh, follow him here. Blah 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 blah. Like
you follow Sal, I'll follow.
Yeah, it was very like wooden for the most part. I felt like performance. Maybe because there was no characters there. There's very little like character to the dialogue itself. So.
I will say this, which first will speak to style, which we'll get to in a moment. I liked it because the sound of the film is just so outstanding. Every little detailed sound to the large sounds are there, and I love that there was no dialogue because I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to hear the noise of the film.
I'll agree with that, yes.
So, for me, I love that. It wasn't too much. Like, I feel like there was any more dialogue, I would have hated it. It was like just enough. End of the day.
I just didn't like what was there enough to. It's not going to get a 1 from me.
I'm going to give it a 1, but not a very strong 1.
Yeah, ditto.
Fair enough.
All right.
What do you give it, Leah?
I'm going to give it a soft 1. It carried me enough through the film, and that will lead me into style. And again, the sound of this film, every time I watch it, I mean, I haven't seen it in a few years, and actually, wow, a good amount of years now that I think about it, almost like 8 years, wow. Just every little, like, while the French guy is walking down the street, you can hear the tapping of his umbrella with every step that he takes. And when the doors of the train slam and he puts his umbrella in, again, you hear that noise, you hear the footsteps throughout the film, and it, like, it's just so stunning. And even in the sense that, like, chase scenes are really hard to edit. And if you think of the scene that Ian referenced with the mirror in front of it, getting that camera angle to make it look to the viewer as if two different things are happening, and then understanding that from both characters' kind of points of view is really intense and a very difficult thing to manage. And to have an entire movie about that, about the moving parts and the editing and the cutting, it's just, it's so well, it's a beauty for the eyes and the ears, but kind of like not for the mind.
It's interesting. This is something I've noticed, because I'm just to say right off the bat that cinematography is beautiful in this. I'm giving it a 1 strictly for that. But the director is obsessed with having the characters eat food. You have the first murder in this. The guy's carrying a baguette.
Maybe that was a running gag, but I
and
noticed
the villain just breaks off. I was kind of saying in my mind, take the bread with you. Take the bread
I was
with
thinking,
you.
leave the gun and take the car.
No, yes. But see, I love that, because I think that's one of the things that's so missing from film is, like, the normal everyday things that you would do. If these people are really on a stakeout for that long, yeah, they're going to need to eat, like... Or there's a one part where on the train it stops suddenly and one of the people hits their head against the glass and it hurts him and it cuts him and you see blood. It's realistic in those little details.
And Gene Hackman, after tracing in that car, when he got he was basically being held up by the wall from taking, like, blows from chasing after it.
Yeah.
So again, like, visually, this is a fantastic movie, but narrative-wise, it's awful.
I agree with that. It was shot very well. So, like, maybe again this is a case of the after effect where a lot of things probably took inspiration from this. So, like, you've seen it a lot, but maybe, like, I did like the chase scenes overall. As I said, when they, like, the shots did a good job of building up tension. Like, they had, like, nice high shots and, like, then it would cut to, like, a nice different angle, but it was all cohesive to what's going on. You understood who was where and who was doing what. However, I will have to mention 2 things. One thing I definitely liked, and this goes to something I'm going to like by default. The scene where he has the car and is chasing the train, that was like a GTA like mission or scene to me. Like, because it would cut to the inside of the car and then it would cut, like, where the chain was. Like, that was all cool. I liked it a lot. And yeah, I thought it was the clever, like, when Gene Hackman catches up to the French guy on the subway and they're switching trains. See, that was fine at first, but then it threatened to lapse itself into parody in some sense. Like, I almost found myself being like, this could be a Monty Python sketch or like a Lost sketch, like you're like, amusingly switching trains or something. But it was still overall fine. But I agree with you guys for sure. It captured the spirit of New York, like the time and the feel of that place. And cinematography was fantastic for sure. So on all those fronts, it definitely deserves a 1 from me.
Yeah, definitely agree. And then for Wood Scott, what would you say? Would you recommend it?
This is the toughest one to answer. I don't know if I would really, like. Yeah, this is MOTSterpiece, so it's on the list of people ostensibly more qualified than us to tell you which films to watch, and they told us to watch this one. However, it is 93 or something like that on the list, which is way low.
In fact, it lost
what was it,
23 spots
between when they updated the list. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I think that's an indicator. I don't think I would. If someone asked me, I would probably be like, you could, but there's probably 10 other things I could name for you that are definitely better.
There's 10 other in this genre.
Yeah.
That I could name over
and maybe it's maybe like those things like built upon the French Connection, like some of the things they did. Sure, and let's give it credit for some of those things, but on its own, I just don't think it's enough.
Again, we're focused narratively.
Yeah, like I said.
And this is an awful...
As a self-contained work, I cannot recommend it.
I would say this. If you are a film student or someone who likes that sort of thing, if you like cinema and all that, watch it. If you want a good story and a fun narrative, don't watch it.
Exactly.
And if we're voting on narrative, I gotta go with a 0.
And I will also, as I've mentioned earlier, like, narratively, this is one of the weakest movies I've seen.
Sure.
I feel bad because... I don't feel bad because I remember coming out of this movie like 10, 15 years ago disappointed.
And now you can
I
say
thought
why.
maybe I was too young to truly appreciate it.
No,
but
they just told
no,
a bad
it's-
story.
Yeah.
Somewhat. It looked cool, but the story itself was a bit weak.
All right, so we're going to give the final totals.
Yeah. All right, Ian, set it off.
Myself and Leah both gave this movie a 5. And Scott a 4. So that's a total of...
All right.
So the final score of a 4.66 repeating.
Of course, as always.
So,
I think that's about right.
Yeah,
That's what it
that sounds
deserves
about
narratively
right.
is all.
Completely agree, and we actually had we're very incohesive in this sense, which is very rare for us. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed our edition for French Connection. Oh, I'm Leah Behar. Sorry.
Jonathan Ian Menzer.
And Scott Dell, of course, as always. See you next time on MOTSterpiece.
We hope you've enjoyed your stay.
MOTSterpiece Theater.
Join us again next time, won't you?
MOTSterpiece Theater.
Music and editing by Chris Morgan.
MOTSterpiece Theater.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi.
MOTSterpiece